Good morning and welcome to the second session or part 2 of Digital Literacy Basics presented by Innovative. I'm Nanette Knott, and our other panelists joining us, our main speaker, Bernd Becker of SJSU, who you probably remember from last week, and our chat moderator, my colleague, Jean Berard, who also joined us last week. So before we get started, some logistics. Part 1, as I said last week, those recordings are available. If you attended last week and were registered for session 1, you got them in email. They're also available on our new YouTube channel at Innovative. If you just search YouTube for Innovative Hot Topics, they and the first two, Usability Basics that we did in August, will pop up. They'll also be coming soon on a special Hot Topics page at III.com, which I hope to release here at the end of the week, and I'll include links to that in your email from this session. And of course, we are recording this session part 2, and you will also get it in all of these 3 sessions. You'll get an email from me at the end of the week, by the end of the day, Friday actually, with this session's recording. It will be posted at the same time to our YouTube channel, and that promised link will come in for our new Hot Topics page, so you can download off of it, register for any of the sessions. If you missed a session and weren't registered, get the download for those sessions there as well. So today we'll be going into getting started with digital literacy at your library, and Bernd will take us through models for the future of digital literacy at your library. Just a couple of reminders. Please chat your thoughts and questions as they occur. Jean will be monitoring that, and at breakpoints we'll interject them into the conversation. I'll also be chatting out questions as they come up, so you have time to think and type. And we'll do a practice one here. If you haven't yet, please drop us a chat for where you're logging on from today. And if you attend session 1 and have any lingering questions, please feel free to drop them in chat, and we'll make sure that we get them into the conversation. Jean, who do we have, or where do we have folks logging in from today?
Well, we have someone from North Carolina and someone from Indiana. That's the only 2 who've let us know their location thus far.
All right, and I just got a private chat that we have someone coming in from from North Carolina. So it looks like we're coming in from the east and the south today, which is what this time,
And we have someone from Bulgaria.
Oh, great. All right, Bernd, I think that if you'd like to move on to the next slide, then I want to add a little bit of context here for why we're doing Hot Topics here at Innovative. And I have to catch my notes up, too, to be able to tell you why we're doing Hot Topics. So before we head into the program, I did want to add a bit of context from our perspective to set the stage and to help you understand why we've introduced Hot Topics into our training lineup here. And we've done it because we're in this together, right? It's the service, the system, the library, the platform, the vendors, and our customers alike. Across the knowledge lifecycle, both inside and outside library, we're undergoing great change. And it's risky and scary, and there's a lot of new things, which is why I sort of liked this picture. It's almost a balancing act. And we need refreshers. And we all need a helping hand, not to mention a free tasting, to see if we like it. And if trainings like these Innovative's new Beyond the ILS trainings will help us, because we are going beyond training you in the software, more than just training you in our software. We're talking in these trainings about the things that become before, after, and in between the software. We're talking about the library things that underlie all of it, the whys and hows that we use our software. And these Beyond the ILS trainings are specifically designed for practicing professionals, because we don't, amidst our jobs, have time to go back to library school, and we can't expect our new hires that are just out of library school to bear the weight of educating us all in practice. And we know that conferences are expensive, and it can take weeks out of our calendar to do so. These trainings are designed to fit into our work days and get us into action quickly, as we'll see with Bernd today. And they're also designed to help us address our fears, which is why we start out in session 1 in Hot Topics with debunking the myths, because we're all fearful when we start something new. And finally, they're presented by experts like Bernd, MLIS educators, others who have been there, who have done the job, and who are educating our new hires. So if that's why hot topics, why digital literacy specifically as part of them? And the answer is fairly simple. It's the basis point for many of those underlying use cases, the whys of library. We don't talk about it very much sometimes, or we don't hear it talked about in the use cases, but that move from information literacy to digital literacy, or the evolution as Bernd brought out last week, where our lives are moving into the computers. And as I used last week, I set into context for the use cases in our metadata bootcamp, moving from the card catalog to identities as that digital literacy evolves, as our digital lives evolve, digital literacy then becomes that foundation to many of our business cases that we execute and build in library. And we're doing these business cases in and through our systems, especially when we're trying to embed into our patrons' lives, works, and homes. And digital literacy and thinking about it in the way that Bernd talked about it is a great way to allow for the expansion. Just like we're expanding our topics here and our training sessions here in our Beyond the ILS bootcamps. I mentioned metadata. We also have them for content, the knowledge economy or IP lifecycle, the business of library, and our emerging product and service mixes, and leadership and staff development. So I hope, as I'll show you at the end, that if you want to dig deeper into any of these topics, that you'll join us, Jean or I, or one of our other consultants for one of those sessions, which also are designed to fit into your work life in short sessions across 6 weeks, so you can devote 2 hours to it, and you can do it right in your workplace. So the other reason for digital literacy is because, as Bernd showed us last week, it accounts for the real-world variety and variance, be it of our patrons or of our business cases and how we encode our data to answer our patrons' needs. It's a key feature. It's a piece of use case development. It's a piece of business case development and justification, and it provides us with a ready measure of our systems and services, a metric, if you will, to how well that we're doing this job, how well we're integrating this into our products and services. And just one last slide then in this area before I turn the session over to Bernd. I wanted to bring us back to focus that Bernd left us with this slide last week, that it explains our patrons' problems as they come into the library to address their needs, answer their knowledge questions. They deal with 2 places, the information, and they have to overcome the technology as well. And with that, I'll let Bernd show us how we can go further.
Thank you, Nanette. I'm happy to have to be back and talk to you all about this in this second session. As Nanette was showing in this previous slide, information literacy, from a working practitioner, information literacy is now just completely coupled with digital literacy, and it's almost impossible to have one without the other, because most of the information and the information need that people are coming to us with, whether it's basic or complex problems, it's always tied into technology. So we find that a lot of what we do when providing information also goes along with some sort of technical instruction as well, and that's where we get this kind of merge of digital literacy and information literacy. Just a quick about me. I am currently serving as a liaison librarian at San Jose State University. I work with the psychology departments and the counselor education program. I've also picked up some instruction here at our library school, it's the iSchool now, where I do teach information literacy instruction and learning. So I'm happy to be here and provide some of the content that I work with students, and like Nanette was saying, preparing them, new hires. I'm happy to come in and provide the same information to you all as well. This will be broken up into 2 sessions. It's going to get a little bit more technical, show you, demonstrate some of the software that we use, as well as some of the principles behind creating the content. And then in part 2, we'll look at some things other libraries and different types of libraries are doing along the realms of digital literacy. So just as a refresher, or in case you weren't able to view or attend the first session, I would like to recap our definition of digital literacy. So as Nanette was saying, it is closely aligned to information literacy, but it is indeed its own concept. So using the American Library Association's description, we'll approach digital literacy as being the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, understand, evaluate, create, communicate digital information. And this is an ability that requires both cognitive and technical skills. So to simplify that definition, you can think of digital literacy as the range of abilities in using technology to access, share, and create information. And I do like to think of digital literacy as a range or a spectrum in how people engage with digital information. And that's an important thing to keep in mind as you're working with an individual or an audience. People are going to be engaging with digital information with a wide range of abilities and approaches. And this definition of digital literacy entails that we have to understand how people engage with information. So last session we looked at some Pew Research looking at how people learn with digital technology, but there is another one by the Pew Research Center that also sought to identify 5 dimensions of people's engagement with information. And they were grouped as the eager and willing, the confident, the cautious and the curious, the doubtful, and the wary. So the eager and the willing and the confident, they're relatively engaged with information. The cautious and curious are a little bit more ambivalent. And then we have the doubtful and the wary. And they are, as you might expect, relatively wary of information. So these are the ways in which your students, patrons, or audience will approach what you have to offer them in terms of digital literacy skill building or instruction. The eager and the willing, this is an ideal group to work with in regards to digital literacy. They are the active seekers of information and they have a strong interest in learning. That's a wonderful combination. They have the highest interest in news and trust in information sources. These are people that express concerns about their online capabilities, but they are anxious to improve their digital skills and information literacy. Next on the spectrum, we have the confident. They combine a strong interest in information, high levels of trust in information sources, and self-assurance that they can navigate the information landscape themselves. This group is very self-reliant in how they handle information flows. Then there's the cautious and the curious. And this group has been identified as having a strong interest in news and information. They have a lot of technology access, but they don't have a high levels of trust in news, in sources of news and news information. And this is particularly current. Some of this distrust comes through national news organizations, financial institutions, and the government. So that's the big 3. This group is twice as likely as all adults to be interested in getting training on digital skills and information literacy. At the same time, they also report significant levels of stress over trying new things, and they have busy lives. So this is also an ideal group whose attention you might want to capture, but they also happen to be the smallest group. Then we get to our groups of people that will take a little bit more convincing. The doubtful are leery of information sources, particularly local and national news. They have very busy lives, which could also be why they show lower levels of interest in updating their digital skills or their information literacy. And finally, we have the wary. The wary have the lowest level of trust of information sources. The wary also have the lowest skills of broadband and smartphone adoption. They declare little interest in upgrading their digital skills, and if we're working with this group, they're going to require creative approaches on our end to learn and teach them these digital literacy skills. The important thing to remember here is that no matter what disposition we consider ourselves now, we've all been a member of one of these groups at one time. Improving digital literacy is not a one-size-fits-all skill set. We have to adapt our approach to working with groups to meet their levels of digital literacy needs. And this approach supports the idea of the 3 models of digital literacy that I introduced to us last week by the New Media Consortium. I did cover this in greater detail, but let's quickly review this principle. The New Media Consortium proposes 3 models of digital literacy: universal digital literacy, creative digital literacy, and subject-specific digital literacy, which is also they describe as digital literacy across disciplines. Now, if we approach digital literacy in this way, this will help us determine the content of our digital literacy instruction, and it should also reflect the audience's dispositions. So in universal literacy, in that type of session, you'll be focusing on the basic digital tools. In a creative literacy instruction or session, you'll incorporate the basics along with more advanced technical skills that lead to the creation of content. And then in the literacy across discipline models, you'll look at connecting digital literacy skills to subject-specific areas. Your instruction in one of these models will incorporate multiple methods of interactions. If you're holding a traditional workshop, you'll be dealing with in-person instruction and demonstrations. But if it's not face-to-face, then you're going to be incorporating demonstrations in the form of screenshots, screencasts, which is a fancy way for video recording, or full-length video tutorials. In regards to digital literacy, I just want to hear from the audience, what are some things that you envision yourself teaching? Would it be a basic universal literacy? Would it be creative literacy? Or are you thinking something more advanced in terms of subject-specific digital literacy? So in our audience today, if I were to approach you saying, okay, you've got to teach some digital literacy, how do you think you would carry that out?
So we have one person who has said critically evaluating web sources or how to search a database for a specific subject area. Okay.
Okay. So very technology-oriented tool demonstrations. But then you're also talking about, in terms of evaluating websites, that gets into more of the theory. That's not necessarily just a tool we point someone towards. It's having to walk them through a thought process. Definitely, that's both ends of the digital literacy spectrum, the technical and the cognitive.
Theory, but also navigating websites and looking for clues.
Yeah, yeah.
Subject specific.
Yeah, it's tough. That's a wide range of things, and that's really truly reflective of what's being asked of us as professionals, whether you're library staff or at the reference desk or in a classroom, whether you're working with students or public patrons. It is one of the few concepts that I've seen really stretch across the different avenues of librarianship.
And someone has said probably visual literacy as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, when you're teaching digital literacy skills, something I hit on last time was you've got to remember to approach it both as teaching and training. You're walking the person through the ideas and the purposes of the technology, but you're also having to train them right in those necessary technical steps. You got to remember you've got to move slowly, and you've always got to provide context. So how does this connect to their information need? What would they be thinking or doing while they're using these technical steps? Along with that, all of the training, try to keep it focused and remember to include exercises. Let them engage and mirror what you're doing and what you're showing them. And also important to digital literacy instruction is to provide your lesson or your material in multiple formats. In general, by multiple formats, it's going to be one or a combination of either in-person instruction, screenshots, screencasts, which we'll talk about there. That's a video recording of your screen. and then or formal video tutorials. So to help you plan your tutorials or your instruction, first I suggest using the storyboarding approach. And this is something that comes out of the film and media studies. So I actually start with a blank PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll start adding screenshots to the slides and taking pictures, screenshots of the elements that I want to discuss in the lesson. And then I write out the script or the narration, and this helps keep a solid pace, and it also will remove any ums and ahs or awkward pauses from from the finished product. And as an added benefit, when you're finished, you can also provide your audience or whoever you're working with the PowerPoint slides in the form of a handout. And this will allow them to follow along with your instruction as well as have something to refer to later. So regardless of your model or your audience, there are some key tools that are available that you can use to really enhance your digital literacy instruction. So on the free end, there's programs like Jing or Screencast-O-Matic. Both these programs will let you create video tutorials and instructions on the fly. Jing also includes a screenshot feature that you'll be able to take pictures and annotate them. And then coming in at currently the $50 price point is this tool called Snagit. Now Snagit is made by the same company that makes Jing, but it provides a bit more advanced editing features. And then the gorilla in the room is Camtasia. And this is a video production program that lets you create full-length videos with an extensive array of editing options. So what I'd like to do now is demonstrate some of the features of these programs and really take a closer look at what they can do. So this will be moving into the ums and ahs part of the presentation. But if you have any questions while I'm demoing some of these tools, please let me know, and feel free to jump in and I'll answer those. So I do want to start with Jing. So like I said, Jing is free, and Jing, Camtasia, and Snagit all come from the same company called TechSmith. So what Jing does, like I said, this is the free screenshot and short screencasting software. It works as this little sun, and the sun will then sit wherever you put it on your screen. And I'm hoping everybody can see my screen at this point. Are we good? We're live? All right.
I can see it.
Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
no problem. Yes. So with Jing, the menu actually sits in this little sun, and you can place it anywhere on your screen. And it provides, first, it provides a capturing area where you define what you want to share or record. So let's start with, let's say, the library's homepage. So if you were wanting to demonstrate or teach someone just general skills on how to do something on your library's website, first you define the area that you want to record or capture with Jing. So, obviously I don't have to share my bookmarks, and I don't have to share anything other than keep it focused on the content. So here's my library's homepage, and now that is the recording area. Only anything that appears in this box, everything else gets grayed out, will either be captured as a screenshot or a video recording. And then after you define the area, you have the options here in this new menu that pops up. And it's letting you know, asking you, do you want to use this now area to capture an image? So that would be the screenshot. Or do you want to record a video? Personally, what I think the best use of Jing is for these images, capturing the screenshots. The video works okay. I think some of the audio processing isn't the greatest. So usually with video recordings, I go with Screencast-O-Matic. But again, it's fine. And this is really good for on-the-fly instruction. So if you're at the reference desk or you're working with someone, you have to, and you're demonstrating it and they're looking confused, I usually say, hey, let me create a screenshot or screencast and I'll send it to you, and just so you can refer to and go, but if you want to go back and look at what we did. So I'm going to use a capture image. And what it did, everything that I had defined is now in this image. So someone might say, well, that's not really any better or worse than print screen, and yeah, it's true. But the real power of Jing's screen capturing is in the annotations. And this is where you can provide cues. You can add text to it or quickly edit and create points of interest, points of highlights. So if I tell students, okay, you got to look for the databases. Databases can be found here or here. So it's on the fly, easily editable. Another cue you can use in this box, add text. Can't get too fancy. I mean, it actually, does have some different fonts. I've never really messed with the fonts. That's maybe a little overkill for some of these things. But this is a great tool, especially for database instruction, where you're having to point people to what to click, what are steps. I've seen students in my instruction classes, they'll provide written steps, and then they'll provide screenshots to go along with it. So they'll say in step 1, and they'll provide the instructions, then in step 2, and then they'll provide these annotated screenshots. So this is Jing. It's awesome, awesome tool. It is one of the tools that I want all of my students at the ICE school to have in their digital literacy toolbox. This is a tool, like I said, it is absolutely free. That is also used by almost all of the librarians here that I work with at San Jose State. And it's very forgiving. You can see I keep editing. You can edit to your heart's desire. You probably don't want to go too overkill with the annotations. You don't want to lose somebody. That takes skills, but fascinating tool. Then when you're done, now with screenshots, you can name it homepage, and then you can save it to your desktop. And this is what then I'll provide in someone's email, or these are some of the, when I was going back to about the, when you're planning your presentation, these are the screenshots that I'll use in planning my storyboarding for a tutorial. But I do want to show you now something that is cool going back to Jing. The other feature is the video capture. So when it does record your audio, but you can also have it muted. It gives me this prompt. I do have my mic off at the moment. Now, this is awesome. Now, so for the Jing screen capture, that's great with 1 or 2 clicking steps. But if you want to have a demonstration, you would use the Jing capturing software. It has a 5-minute limit. You can really walk someone through the steps. Screencasts are best for multiple step demonstrations. It just shows you, like, if I had to show someone how to use this EndNote, of course, I would go quite a bit slower through all this. Okay, I just wanted to capture that. So it's great for, how to use the catalog, demonstrations. I would be reading off a script, maybe describing some of these things, and then showing them, how to email it or save it for a permanent link. Now, Jing screen capture software only has a 5-minute limit, and like I said, the audio isn't the greatest, but this is what the end product looks like. Really walk them through that.
So, Bernd, we did get a comment that
Sure.
What you just mentioned about the audio. Somebody said they've used both Jing and Screencast-O-Matic, and they're good. But if you want to include audio, they've had to find a suitable room and equipment for good sound quality. So they use TechSmith Relay.
Okay, awesome.
For lecture recording.
Right.
But these are good for short digital demonstrations.
Exactly. So this is great for something on the fly. What I do like about Jing and their video capturing, and is with Jing, if you save it, it saves it as a flash. It's almost not a really universally recognized or easy to open video, but Jing will let you save the video on their own site called Screencast.com. So when you're done with your video, it will upload it to its own version of, kind of think of it like YouTube. You can see it's uploading here, but then this provides a link that I will then provide in an email or in chat, you know, if you're doing a chat reference. Or if I'm on the phone with someone, I'll say, hold on, I'm sending you a link showing you the steps that I'm walking through. And it's a free, 2-click, easy hosting, video hosting software. It's awesome. The fact that it's free is just incredible. So along those same lines, another free one that I was mentioning is Screencast-O-Matic. It works in a lot of the same ways, but what I like about Screencast-O-Matic is that you have a 15-minute, it's created by Big Nerd, a company called Big Nerd. I love it. Very similar. You define the area. So as you can see, what I normally do when I'm creating tutorials for digital library instruction, I'll do the window split screen. So I'll have my script over here on the right, and then I define the screen that I'm using over here on the left. Works very similar, exact same process. But what I like about Screencast-O-Matic, the 15-minute time lets you get into a little bit more involved tutorials, but it has a direct upload to YouTube. And YouTube is just a little bit more of a recognized, accepted form of video sharing. I feel like people might be a little less hesitant to click on a YouTube link that I sent them rather than something called Screencast.com. So I do like, again, I work with students when they're creating longer tutorials. We do Screencast-O-Matic because of that 15 minutes and because of the direct export to YouTube. Right, and I just want to demonstrate just how simple this is. And it's something we talked about last session. You don't have to be an expert to provide digital literacy instruction. Easy steps. And if you don't know how to use a tool that you're showing them, that's fine. Go to YouTube and look it up. Someone's already created a tutorial on how to use tutorial software. Learn by other people. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Screencast does keep track, I believe, Screencast-O-Matic does keep track of your clicks. You can see the mouse. Just fascinating for demonstrations. Again, it's a free tool. Absolutely love it.
We do have a question. I noticed Screencast-O-Matic has a webcam option. Have you found this useful?
So it could be useful. When I'm doing screen recordings, I go into Camtasia. I think it just does a little bit higher quality capturing and with the processing. In quick tutorials or on-the-fly stuff that I'm talking about, it's usually just to deliver the information to the person as quickly and as succinctly as possible. And I think adding and this is just me personally for the work that I deal with, having my face in that video, I don't know if they necessarily need an instructor at that time, they just need the steps. Now, if we're going into the instructor where I'll walk someone through and I need to make that connection with the audience, I will do the webcam recording. But I usually do that in Camtasia just because it offers me a little bit more flexibility. One thing I want to show coming in, like I said, at the higher cost is Snagit. Now, Snagit is sort of like a pumped up Jing, but it offers a lot more variety in just the terms of content that you can create. I would say if we're dealing with a budget and you have $50 and you're wanting to create things that you want to host on your website or host on the library's homepage, the $50, go with the Snagit. It is probably the better buy-in. You'll create a little bit more cleaner, fancier items. So I hope you can see what's happening here. Snagit can automatically identify different areas of a window that you're looking at. And so it's understanding that you're probably not, you know, again, wanting to record the power bar, but if you're wanting to walk someone through how to use, let's say, a PowerPoint, you can define these. It automatically defines these very specific areas, follows a lot of the same prompts, and because it's the same company that made Jing, defining what you want to record, the sounds coming through on your computer, or, you know, walking through someone through these steps. And you have just a little bit more fancier editing options. Again, if it's something that you're going to edit and you're going to want to produce, again, like on a website, you probably want to go with Snagit. Snagit lets you directly upload to YouTube again, which is a great feature. Upload directly to Google Drive. Also with Snagit's screenshot abilities, you can get a lot more editing into the screenshot. So you can like kind of blur out or block out other elements and really enhance things that these cues or things that you want to draw the user's attention towards, which is important when we're talking about technology, because again, just looking at like the PowerPoint, you know, if you're used to PowerPoint, you kind of automatically know what to look at and what to work with. But if you're someone who's new to a new piece of software, all this stuff is so overwhelming. What does all this stuff mean? And you know, to an experienced user, I know, well, I'm not going to even deal with these paragraph features because I'm not typing anything. But the new user, thinking about where they're coming from, you've got to walk them through and be very, very careful, very, very slow, very, very technical. Otherwise, they're going to get that overwhelmed, and you're going to lose them.
So we have another question. Do
Sure.
all of these tools allow the creation of captions or subtitles?
So if you're moving into caption subtitles, that's when we're moving into Camtasia. And that is important, right? Because if you are posting content on a public page for a library, it probably needs to be ADA compliant or universal compliant, having those subtitles or that script. So if I'm in a scenario where I'm using a tool where I can't use creating a video, but for whatever reason I can't have subtitles, I've got to provide them with a script of everything that I said. And that goes back to that storyboarding. If you write everything out, you'll have that script that you can share with the person. But getting into the real full-length editing, full-length videos with subtitles and timed captions, you're going to want to work with Camtasia. However, I do want to say, using Snagit or Screencast-O-Matic, when you send to YouTube and upload it to YouTube, YouTube does have a captioning feature, and I wonder if everyone's familiar with that. You can go in and then add captions through YouTube to your video. So that's something that you would have to do manually if you're using the YouTube as an outlet. Now the thing with YouTube, YouTube is great. Again, it's universally recognized, and then also with that, just going to open up a video I have for some of my students in YouTube. Again, it's universally recognized. Everyone loves YouTube. But if you're doing it something that you're going to want to post on your institution, you're going to probably need to have subtitles. But you're going to be able to do that once you upload your video. You click on Edit Video, and again, just go to YouTube, see how to, type in how do I add subtitles to my YouTube videos. That'll really walk you through these steps. But here's where you can add your own subtitles. You can let YouTube try to automatically discern what you're saying, which you end up with some funny things, but then you can kind of go back and edit them or add your own subtitles. So that's something that, extra steps that you'll have to do if you're using Screencast-O-Matic or Snagit. One of the problems with YouTube for digital library hosting digital literacy instruction videos is that As you know, software and these tools that we're showing people how to use, they change frequently. So that means you're going to have to change your videos if you're showing them something technical, click here, click there kind of thing. So YouTube, if you have to go in and change a video, YouTube will not let you you can't go in and change a video in YouTube. You have to actually upload a whole new one and get a whole new web address for that video. That's why our library has actually moved over to another video streaming service called Vimeo. Very similar, it's the exact same thing as YouTube. But with Vimeo, if I uploaded a video on how to use our library's website, and then our software on the website changes, I can go back and replace that video in Vimeo, and it let me keep that same link. So if I've shared that link with other people, you know, the link doesn't change. Whereas YouTube, if you change a video or add something new, it doesn't let you retain that permanent link. So that's just kind of, you know, there's pluses and minuses with all the technology. The absolutely best software I've used for tutorials and digital literacy instructions is this one called Camtasia. Again, it follows the same company as Jing and Snagit, so you're really just kind of moving up on the tiers. This is where, as you can see here, it can incorporate the webcam, so it'll start recording what I'm doing in my view as well as what I'm seeing here. And when you're done with that recording, it opens it up in Camtasia Studio. And this is where you can really get to work. Now, I don't want you to be intimidated by Camtasia. There's a lot of stuff going on. Again, you don't have to learn and be an expert in absolutely everything. But here's a screen tutorial that I just kind of played with yesterday in prepping for this. You can see what it does. It actually splits your audio, and it splits your the screen that it captured. Here it captured me, so the video that I'm doing, and this is what I'll use in longer instructions if I feel like you need to, let me just, my recording, really walk them through, and I'm walking them through how to connect to these databases. No maximum length of time here, which is awesome for these longer longer demonstrations. Probably one of the strongest benefits with Camtasia as well, as someone was talking about, it's the captioning. So it can let you then start adding in the captions. You'll be able to type them out. You know, if you didn't type them out beforehand, you can type out everything that you're saying here. But always use that script. I try to get my students always use this script, because the script will help guide you. It helps keep your pace, but then it also, the script is your captions. So I copy and pasted the script here into the captioning. Camtasia will make this ADA compliant. And then the way you add tutorials to this is every time I hear a word, I'll click on the word and I'll sync the captions. And just like that, I now have a captioned. And when I go to send this over to YouTube, it will, I can send over the captions, but now that I have the captions here, I actually like to download a copy of the captions. It's synced perfectly now to the timing of when I say the words and whatnot. You know, it's perfectly synced captions. Also, what's really cool about Camtasia, doesn't necessarily have to be a static recording. Let's say, you know, as I'm talking about the articles and databases here, I can go in and zoom in. and zoom in into what I'm talking to them about, and then zoom back out. A little overkill there, but you can see it gets a lot more into the production mode. And those are the tools in my digital literacy instruction toolkit for using, for creating just these instructions or walkthrough, and everything from simple editing to quick screenshots to, like I said, these full-length videos. So before we move on, I'd just like to hear any thoughts or questions about the software that we looked at. Any ideas, anything that I might have missed here?
So we do have a comment that it's nice to have the same commands and similar actions across connected tools. That allows for ease of use, that really help with productivity. And then another comment that the Camtasia is perfect for bite-sized, step-by-step instruction. And in an academic library, these bite-sized clips are very useful for supplementing our digital literacy teaching as well as dealing with individual inquiries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially when those individual inquiries are repeated questions that you hear from one session to another, or you get the same email questions back and forth. You can just point them, create a tutorial. Oh, I keep getting questions about how to use this feature. Create a tutorial for it and just link them, the students to that. And you're absolutely right. So, if you're in an academic library like me, we only have these one-shot sessions to teach some of these, to teach our students. That means we get usually one shot a semester. For some of them, it might be one time that they're in the library face-to-face. So we have to juggle our time, right? I can't cover absolutely everything, but I'll create tutorials on my research guide, on my LibGuide, to just, again, it's that supplemental, and point them towards it. Let them know if you need more questions. I can't cover how to search the catalog right now, but I have this video right here when you're at home to look at if you're having questions about the catalog. But right now we're going to be focusing on the databases. So it is perfect for supplemental instruction. Absolutely.
So another comment that there seems to be the free tools seem to be mostly intuitive, plug and play, but then with Snagit and Camtasia, there seems to be, there'd be more of a learning curve.
That's right. That's right. And if you're starting brand new, don't jump into Snagit or Camtasia. Start with, and this is what I work with my students, teaching them how to teach digital literacy instruction. Start with the free stuff, because it's going to be the bare bones. And everything that comes after that is going to be building off those bare bones, like you said, with the same command, same look and feel. So just learn the basics first, and then just move up, if you need to, even into Snagit and Camtasia. But I also want to say really quick, you don't have to teach yourself. You don't have to learn it blindly. All of these tools, go to their websites. Every one of these will have step-by-step tutorials. They'll walk you through, how do I use this tool? Or go to YouTube, how do I use Jing? How do I use Snagit? How do I use Screencast-O-Matic? Someone made a tutorial on how to use tutorial software. And that's really important, because if I showed you all the steps right now for Jing, and this gets recorded, this webcast is getting recorded, and then it goes up on YouTube, if someone looks at it a year from now, the tool will change. I always go to the company's website, look for their tutorials, because this is going to be the most up-to-date stuff on how to use the newest features or whatever version that I'm using of the software. So always go, and that's why I really like TechSmith. They're built around, and I don't work for TechSmith, at all. I've got no stake in this company, but they are built around educational technology. So I feel like they kind of know how to teach educators. They know how to deliver this kind of instruction, and I truly appreciate, in these little bite-size. I have my students in my courses go through the Jing tutorials on the Jing tutorial page, and then they are immediately up to date on how to use these tools. They're all really bite-size. Again, it will get complicated the deeper you go and the higher level you get with these tools, but you just learn the basics and they will build off of each other, and you'll realize, oh, this is just another define the area part of this tool. They all kind of work very, very, very similarly. Any other thoughts or questions?
So that's it for
all right.
Comments on the chat.
Sounds good. So now that you know some of the tools to use, I want to move us forward and just learn some of the best practices or the best approaches that will shape the content that you're going to create. So starting with the basics, always state the goals at the beginning of your instruction. So when you're making videos, you might be tempted to launch into a long greeting and introduction, and you see that in YouTube a lot. But for tutorials and digital literacy technical stuff, there's no time for that. You just got to state the goal, and you've got to move forward with your instruction. And whatever you're teaching, you've got to break down each step into simple tasks. So remember, you got to put yourself in the audience's shoes. And if we're talking about basic universal digital literacy, then you've got to move very, very slowly while you're demonstrating and talking to the person through each step. And not knocking on anyone, but never underestimate a person's ability to get lost. So they could be dealing with all kinds of doubts and technophobia that's going to interfere with your instruction and whatever steps that you're providing. And also try to focus only on the steps necessary to reach their goal. So for example, you don't have to show them every single feature of an ebook platform. Okay, if it's a basic session, then just demonstrate, the simplest and fewest amount of steps that the person's going to need to do or go through to go from the catalog to the ebook. And this ties into some key learning principles that go along with multimedia instruction. So we'll look at those now and see how they kind of apply to the content that we're going to create. So one of the core principles of learning is the split attention principle. So this is a concept that says students will learn better when the material does not require them to split their attention between multiple sources of mutually referring information. So in other words, simplify, combine, and streamline the information that you're presenting. So like I said, focus on the goals and keep everything that you present in line with those goals. So here's a classic example of a split attention principle in action. So on the left is a math problem, and the solution to the problem is demonstrated below the figure. So if we apply the split attention principle, we would move the demonstrated solution into the figure. And in this way, their attention is not split, and the information is seamlessly integrated. So again, from the left, you're having to look up and down, up and down, up and down. Your attention is splitting, but moving everything, integrating it all in one spot has been found to increase learning and retention. Then there's the modality principle, and this states that students learn better with audio narration rather than using on-screen text. And this has been found to work best with complex learning. So in other words, when you're teaching with multimedia, try to use narration and graphics. And this is much stronger than providing all of the text alongside information. And this is one of the hardest things for me to deal with. It's almost hard for me to believe that this is true, but narration and graphics work a lot better than text. I love throwing text in my stuff, but I usually have to go back and edit it with the modality principle in mind. And this is also reflected in the redundancy principle. And it's been found that adding redundant text while narrating and demonstrating will overload the learning. So in other words, text has been found to complicate a situation where you've already set it and demonstrated it. And like I said, this is the most difficult for me personally to adhere to, because I've always felt the need to repeat myself by adding accompanying text. And I say to myself, oh, maybe they're visual learners, auditory learners, cram it all in there at once. Because I always thought that repetition in that way is key. And in some ways, repetition is or can be key, but the redundancy principle really challenges this. And you know, I have to keep finding different ways to present my instruction. And this goes along the line with, if you're using on-screen text, you got to take into account another principle called the Spatial Contiguity Principle. And this states that on-screen text and visual materials should be physically integrated rather than separated. So in other words, keep text closely aligned with the graphics. And I think this is really best implemented in any like screenshots or slides that you would provide. So here's the Spatial Contiguity Principle in action. So on the left is a typical diagram of the brain where each part is labeled with a corresponding letter, right? But then on the right, we've applied the Spatial Contiguity Principle so that the text is aligned with the graphic. And you can kind of see how this also ties in with that earlier principle that we just looked at, keeping everything aligned, integrating the text, removing any kind of extra unnecessary information. And this has been found to really support learning and retention. Then there's also the Temporal Contiguity Principle, and this states that the student is going to learn better when the verbal and visual materials are synchronized. So you've got to demonstrate the steps while you're talking about it. Then there's the Coherence Principle, and it's been found that students learn better when extraneous material is excluded rather than included during multimedia explanations. So let's look at the Coherence Principle in action. So in this diagram, we see parts of a flower labeled, but the same information is placed above the diagram and the labels. So the diagram on the right removes the duplicated information, and it keeps it simple without sacrificing any of the facts. And it's stuff like this that you've got to tap into when you're creating screenshots or step-by-step walkthroughs. Don't overload it with the text. Just keep it simple and, again, not necessarily redundant. So these multimedia learning principles can easily be incorporated into your digital literacy instruction when you're creating videos or screenshots, or even in-person demonstrations. So while not every principle is going to fit every scenario, there are some best practices that do work across all modes of digital literacy instruction. It goes back to try to use narration without on-screen text. You don't want to make your students read and listen to the text at the same time. Try to segment or break up your instructional sessions, those bite-sized pieces that someone mentioned earlier. You know, if you're working with 15 minutes of content, consider ways to create a series of 3 5-minute videos instead of a 15-minute video. Start your instruction by introducing terms or concepts that are going to be new or important to the lesson, and this is called pre-training. Going back to that principle of keeping it simple, just make sure that you weed out any unnecessary audio or visual elements. Sure, you've got to find the balance between keeping a person's attention, but you don't want to do that at the cost of distraction. Use arrows, highlighting, or any other cues that will help clarify important elements or confusing images. And this can be easily done with any of the programs that we looked at earlier, like with Jing's, the annotation features. And this is also something I fail at regularly in my digital literacy instruction. I always have to keep going back and cleaning up my images. So on-screen text and images, they've always got to be connected and close together. This is aligning. And here's an example of how I have to go clean this up. So this is a slide that I use when I'm teaching my students how to use an online database. Okay? And at this point in the instruction, I want them to know and make use of the subject major heading filter that's available. So you can see in this slide, I have it queued with the red box, but then I explain it by using the text on the side. But this is also happening while I am in front of the classroom talking to them. Again, it goes back to that personal belief I had, throwing all the information up there in different forms, it'll stick with them somehow. What I should be doing, though, is aligning the description of the subject filters to the queued image. So then their gaze isn't interrupted as they look at the text and the corresponding image. So we move from this, and of course they're going to have to look across the whole search results. And in this point, it might be like, well, where's he talking about subject filters? Is it the stuff in the middle or the stuff on the right? And here I have it outlined. So taking that a step further, the best practice, is that eliminate the weeding, eliminate visual redundancy, and remove visuals that are duplicated by narration or graphics. So going back to my example of the database instruction about subject filters, this is the slide that I'm currently using, but what I should actually do is just simply use the red box as a cue, and this will highlight the filter that I'm talking to them about. And according to the principles, in this way I've eliminated visual redundancy, and I've cued their attention to the item that I'm describing with my narration. And that's really, really hard for me to do. I keep saying that, but I'm much more of a person who throws everything in, but it's really, you've got to clean it up and keep their attention focused. And once again, this needs to all be packaged in a way that your presentation style matches your audience's learning style. So keep things basic if it's a basic skills audience. So before we move on to the final part of our session, I'd just like to hear the audience if there's any questions they might have, or I'd like to hear about any of the principles you struggle with the most, or for people who are experienced in this already, what advice or wisdom could you share with us?
We've got quite a lot of them. Modality, redundancy, coherence. I'm a very wordy person rather than visual, so I need a reminder like this once in a while.
Me too. And what helps is going back to that storyboarding and taking screenshots of every point that you want to make, and then write out the script that goes along with that, and then go back and edit that script so it is less wordy and more succinct, more direct, and coherent. It's a difficult skill to have, and that's something we develop. We work out that muscle and develop it as instructors. Sometimes the way I go about eliminating my words or getting less wording goes back to just keeping it. What is the bare minimum that I have to relate to them in terms, in descriptions or narration? What's the bare minimum to get the point across? And sometimes it feels like maybe too little of text or narration. But again, if that's the way you're thinking, then you're thinking about it from the instructor perspective. You've got to think from the student or the learner, and they just want the either the basic information or they just want the steps to get the information that they need. I'll add a little bit of context to that sometimes. That's the information literacy in me where, I say, well, you might, if you ever have a date range that you have to specify, you can use this filter here, and provide the technical steps with some context. I think that's okay in terms of getting wordy, but digital literacy instruction isn't always a conversation. It shouldn't necessarily be used as a conversation that you're having with the person. You've got to teach like a tutorial.
So the comment is that runs counter to the reference librarian in me.
Yeah, I totally understand. And it's not like you can separate your reference services from digital literacy. They are entwined. When you're providing reference service, you're going to have a touch of digital literacy involved, because if the reference service is, again, how to use an ebook, or comes up with that question, you know, whether it's whatever question it is, it's going to be tied to some, what they're looking for is probably buried somewhere in some form of technology. So if you're approaching it from the reference, you know, you might have a little bit more time to have that conversation. You're right. But then sometimes, so I work at the King Library. We serve the public as well as the academic environment. And sometimes you have to learn who you're working with, who the person is. Do they just want the steps, how to download the ebook, or do they want to have some more of that, focus more on the contextual knowledge? Well, if you're looking at this ebook, you might end up with these other platforms or these other vendors. Let me give you a quick walkthrough of all the guides. But if you are creating video tutorials that you're going to host online, you're going to want to keep those very, very focused. That's where you're going to have to put the reference librarian in the back seat and approach this like a tutorial, where you're just giving them, you know, in a quick bite-sized information how to do what they're possibly going to be asking you about.
And one final comment, somebody's going to try storyboarding. So
yeah, go for it. Go for it. It's a great way to clean up your narration, and it also provides, you go back and look at your script and your storyboard with a really critical eye, thinking about what can I add, you know, what's not making sense, it really walks you through your. It's a lot of, so when I'm working with my students, storyboarding seems like extra work at the time, but then the final product will reflect the time you invested in the storyboarding, for sure. Night and day. So in this next part, I just want to take some time and tour some of the digital literacy models and practices that are already in place in libraries, and most of it's in the US, but I think a lot of these things can be replicated in any library in the world. We'll look at academic, public, and touch on just some school stuff. So first, there's the digital liberal arts at Middlebury. And this is at Middlebury College's Digital Liberal Arts Initiative. And this is a campus-wide effort to encourage faculty to explore new opportunities in digital scholarship. And it really pushes them to take risks and to collaborate and share and learn from each other. So this is creative literacy as well as digital literacy across disciplines. As the students and faculty, they're creating these projects, they develop their digital literacy skill set within their disciplines. And there's everything from history to anthropology to sociology and science. It's a great set of projects there. Deakin University Library, they also offer a framework for assessing students' proficiency in digital literacy. And they provide video tutorials, learning activities, and other resources for faculty to incorporate into their courses. So they've also created these guides that help students and faculty articulate the skills that they need to find, use, and disseminate relevant information sources. The San Jose State University Library, where I work, we've created many sets of online tutorials that train students how to use various online resources that are available to them. But we also walk them through some of the more cognitive steps as well. We have plagiarism tutorials, the evaluating websites tutorials, so those some of the stuff that we create. So to help guide us in our creation of the tutorials, we look at usage patterns and we look at common questions we get about our resources. The videos are closed captioned, and they can easily be embedded into the university library's management system, which is what we call Canvas. So it can go and be pulled directly into the online classes. We don't host our videos. Like I said, instead we use Vimeo to host them. And as I mentioned earlier, we use Vimeo over YouTube because Vimeo lets us update our tutorial without changing the URL, whereas YouTube changes the web address every time we have to update a tutorial. And this does cause a lot of problems if we have the tutorial embedded in Canvas or on one of our research guides. For public libraries, there's the Digitallearn.org, which is hosted by the Public Library Association. This is a series of self-paced tutorials that targets the basics of digital literacy. And these videos are narrated, and they're anywhere from 6 to 22 minutes long. But you can see from the screenshot here, everything from intro to email to navigate a website. And I even like that one, the first one there, why use a computer? So we're really talking about the basics here by the Digitallearn.org. You're able to maybe, if you're at a public library, just link to these if you're not able to create or host your own tutorials. Of course, public libraries aren't limited to universal basic literacy. There's also been recently a high demand for creative literacy. And we're seeing this more and more as public libraries are creating and getting involved in makerspaces. One example from the San Jose Public Library System is the Makerspace. And this is a mobile makerspace that reaches out to communities to teach the fundamentals of creative digital literacy. And they take this spaceship, this bus, into maybe communities that wouldn't have access to this kind of technology. They look at socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic neighborhoods, and just kind of expose both young adults and adults to this. They have 3D printers, fabricators, I'm blanking on milling machines. It's been a huge hit with the public here. But there's also a big focus for makerspaces on teens and adolescents. And the San Jose Public Library has also targeted them as a population that has been very interested in makerspaces. The library provides them with the same tools from the Makerspace, but they have their own space here in the library. And this has been a huge success, and I've seen it grow from just a few pieces of equipment to a full-fledged program. And they've also started incorporating, part of making is coding. Students are here in Silicon Valley, but I think everywhere. The teens are really interested in this coding and developing their digital literacy skills, their creation skill set. One thing I want you to look at, if you're interested in some of the more basic digital literacy, is the Seattle Public Library. And they offer computer classes, on-site computer classes for both universal basic digital literacy as well as creative digital literacy. But what's awesome is that their handouts are available online for you to browse. And you can easily use them to inspire you to create, similar class or similar handouts in your library. So let's see, hopefully this link is working. This goes to one of their basic computer basics handouts. And this is easily something that we could create using like Jing or Snagit or Screencast-O-Matic. It just really walks them through the basics. Here's the parts of all the hardware. Remember talking about priming them, about what are the key terms. They really follow a lot of the good principles and best practices here. Labeling everything, queuing them. So again, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Here they're using Internet Explorer. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel with your digital literacy instruction, but to see what other people have used, what are other people doing. I love it. They just kind of walk them through. So this actually looks like someone took a picture from their cell phone. You could probably find different ways to do this, uploaded it, edited it, and they probably could have easily edited it and added some of these annotations in Word. But I love that they make this available to us, that, again, just if you need your own inspiration or just your own ideas of how to get this connected, they have a ton of stuff here at the Seattle Public Library. I love it. I'm happy to see them doing that. And if you're a school librarian, make sure to check out Digital Learning Day. So this is an event, it's becoming an annual event now that's based around the idea of exploring digital learning opportunities that can be brought into a K-12 classroom. So it helps teachers highlight and showcase educational technology, and students can get exposed to things like coding and makerspaces, which can be integrated into the curriculum. The next one coming up takes place on February 22nd, and there's a lot of resources on that site to help a teacher get ready for that event. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick survey of digital literacy practices, principles, and models that are happening all over in every type of library. And I'm just curious to hear from you all about your experiences with digital literacy in your library, and as well as hear any suggestions or ideas how you could implement digital literacy training.
So one comment, somebody is going to look at their existing bite-sized PowerPoint presentations and redo them, keeping in mind the multimedia learning principles covered here, and then also use Jing or Screencast-O-Matic as an alternative to PowerPoint. And somebody has asked, what is a makerspace?
Oh, a makerspace. Great question. So a makerspace is sort of a general term that gets applied to what's happening in libraries, where they're bringing together a bunch of equipment for people to use or patrons to use to actually make things. So it goes everything, there's a lot of 3D printing. A 3D printer will be added to a makerspace. It's just sort of a designated, you know how we have a reference area in a library, or we have the periodicals area. We're also now looking at makerspace areas in libraries. So here are some, include tools from sewing machines to vinyl cutters, soldering irons, 3D printers. What else is showing up in makerspaces now? Here in our library, we've also created a studio room for students to come in and make video recordings as well as audio production. So it goes back into that creative idea, creative digital literacy. Makerspaces is all about the patron not just consuming information, which is, you know, the prior model of libraries was you come to the library and you consume information. And now we're providing, the libraries are now facilitating the ability to make information or create things. And that's where we're getting into those maker spaces. I hope that answered the question.
Well, one of our participants loves the idea.
It's been a huge hit. I mean, to the point of APL created a bus. Look, I can show you what the inside of this bus looks like. I think they gave us a quick tour. Let me mute the audio. I mean, it's unreal. So here we can see some of the coding, electronic equipment.
That's very
Circuit
cool.
boards. Isn't that cool? Creation. We have a 3D laser cutter. There's a 3D printer. Fabricator, I forget what those things, like a milling device, actually. You design it and then it cuts it out of the board. There's the vinyl cutter. You know, all these things are connected to tech. It taps into the creative, individual aspect of the person, but it's also kind of exposing, that's why it's really good with teens, it is exposing them to some of the basic building blocks of digital literacy. Because a lot of the equipment kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Jing as Jing gets, then Snagit builds off Jing, and Camtasia builds off Snagit. Really exposes them and gets patrons connected to just, again, some of the core principles that we're projecting are going to be necessary in the next couple decades and the near future and the far future. So it's just a different approach that libraries are taking to getting people connected to the information that they're going to need to be a functioning person in a high-tech society. It doesn't look like it's slowing down any ways.
I know, Bernd, this is Nanette. Our Spokane Public Library has a Makerspace that they've combined with a small business incubator. So it has all of the tools related to building a business and the databases. And I noticed when the last time I visited was just a week or so ago, it has both the small business folks in it, and it has our teens that are looking to make that transition. So, and they staff it with a reference librarian for all of the resources at different times, and they post that. And it was interesting. I just kind of sat and watched to see what traffic it got, and it's very heavily used, and not just for the Wi-Fi service, but for the services that are in the Makerspace.
That is awesome, and it is. It goes back to that transition into the new library model, that the library isn't just a place to consume information. It's now moving into a place, and it's based on need, to create information and create content, and libraries are being seen, and they're filling in that community gap of how to do that, how to walk someone through that. The San Jose Public Library has done something very similar, Nanette, to yours, is that we've brought in a small business kind of startup space, as well as a patent office is now connected to the library. So yeah, as people are creating, then the public library will then walk them through into how to patent and really get that off the ground. It's all based on need. It's all based on need. There was a demand for that. They tested a little bit, saw the high traffic for that, and then it's just. And is that model going to fit in every community? No. It's, again, know your audience. What's based on the need. That's basic fundamentals of a library. But here in Silicon Valley, everything is that startup, create, make a business, earn $1 million. Everyone wants to know kind of how to do that. So the libraries step in, and that's a part of something that's a literacy, right? That's a social literacy, but then it's really also based off of the requirement for a digital literacy skills that have to go into that. And libraries are a perfect fit for catering to those needs.
What I thought was interesting about the one here is, they have a very unique space. It's at our downtown library. So the library's building is physically in the center of the business district, including it has a bridge over to Nordstrom's. So it's a very unique space that was hard to attract people in because of parking. And here they attracted the business people in who then bring their kids in. And they have subscriptions to expensive databases, LexisNexis, those things that even in a medium-sized business, folks can't afford. And so I thought it was a very enterprising way to draw more people into the building and to learn to use these tools, too, that we do need in everyday business these days.
Fantastic. That's how libraries are going to stay relevant and survive the digital age. And then as, I'm sure that library, as they started getting more and more questions about LexisNexis, or they started seeing the same questions or concerns repeated, that would be my prompt to then create a tutorial or some sort of handout, walking them through the steps that keep getting asked about.
Well, I didn't look for those, but I'm going to go, after watching your presentation today, I'm going to run out and see if they have them on their website.
I'm sure they'll be able to point you to something.
So no other questions or comments on the chat.
All right. Well, it's been something else.
Oh, I just got one that it was an excellent presentation. It was sent to me privately. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm excited and hopeful that you're going to be able to start creating some content and use some of these awesome tools that are available.
Well, I'll take over. I think we've had an excellent hour and a half. Thank you, Bernd. I know I made notes that I'm going to take back, including into my daily work, including a Slack to a cohort of mine that helps train our internal folks of, hey, as we're looking at software tutorials, here's the place we could start them. We could build this into our education of our internal staff. It's a nice little video with great tips and slides. So hopefully the webpage that we release here at Innovative here in the next week or so helps you do that and see the different free tutorials and presentations that we have available in our Hot Topics series, and I have that for you here. So we've grouped them into individual and institutional competencies. So we have digital literacy basics that we've just finished. We'll be moving into project management basics as we see that as a core skill that we're getting asked a lot about. So we'll move into that in November. And in December, we're adding something a little new. But as we look at our changing staff dynamics, we had some requests for staff development and leadership. And so we are doing a mindful leadership basics with an expert who's been training this for over 20 years in the corporate environment. So we'll be bringing you Kim Cadell. And again, it's a free complimentary training, which sometimes those corporate trainers can be expensive, so we're excited to bring you those skills in December. And then this winter, beginning in January, we enter into the institutional competencies, engagement basics, metadata management basics, and usability basics. And then we repeat them again in the spring and summer so that you can attend again. We'll have all the recordings posted, and you can plan for your staff and your time with us. And then I also wanted to plug our boot camps. So when you're ready to dig deeper into those skills and into the business cases that you're delivering in your libraries, we offer the boot camps. And these are very business-based pieces. So we do a metadata boot camp because we're seeing a lot of change in that lately. We do the IP lifecycle. Bernd mentioned patents, copyrights, and how those pieces fit in. We do a content boot camp as we see Makerspaces, as we see things like BiblioBoard, which is not one of our products, but as we see things like BiblioBoard allowing public libraries to do local connections and collect the outputs of their Makerspaces and other audience outputs, as well as institutional repositories. That's a new skill that we see emerging in library and really needing some focus. And then we also do a Business of Library Bootcamp, so that's your changing mix of products and services in your library. Certainly I'm taking away from this one that I need to go check and make sure that they include Makerspaces in that. And then finally, the Leadership and Staff Development Bootcamp as well. And so the presenters that you've seen in our Hot Topics, some of them are presenting in our boot camps, and then you see more of our trainers and consultants that you're used to, like Jean and I as well. We pair an external and an internal expert in the same way that this test drive in the Hot Topics does. And finally, I just want to say before we end that we do have a new registration site open. If you hadn't used it, you can go to III.com, drops down off of events, and you can see our webinars and our workshops. The workshop takes you to our new registration page where you can see our full calendar for 12 to 18 months, and that's rolling. So you can plan. We had some comments from customers that they wanted to be able to plan better. That's why we offer this full piece to you, and it shows our free as well as our workshop, in-person, and virtual trainings. And now you can automatically process your order here, so hopefully that cuts down on the long PO process you've been seeing from us. And I just showed you the pieces here to walk through that. We'd love to hear what you think about it, and hopefully it's answering your questions, which brings me to my last slide for today, which is we really want to know what you think about Hot Topics, about the boot camps, about our current workshops, about what we're not providing you in our training series and in our offerings that you need to know about. Please email us, drop us a note. NOU gets you straight to us. It's an alias that's been an email here at Innovative for a very long time, and we'll make sure that we get right back to you. With that, I will end the session. I will thank you for joining us. And I hope that we see you in November. Thanks, and have a great day.